How we doing out there, friends? We're back. This is Real Estate Bites, episode number 28. Very excited about this one today. I have a very special guest coming on to talk to us about some real estate insights and news at the state and national level. But before we get to Ms. Rebecca, we are going to jump into our statistics like we do every single week. So let me take you guys over to this week's stats. All right. So, inventory in Lorain County, there are currently 331 units that are active on the MLS. 2 weeks ago, I said this was the lowest number since I started recording these stats back in August. Last week was lower than that, and this week is lower than that by 13 units. So the all-time low inventory woes continue in this real estate market. That said, last week there were 61 units closed. A median square foot of those units was 1,636 square feet. The median home value in Lorain County last week was $225,000. Median square foot price was $135.63 per square foot. The sale price to list price ratio, which you guys know I've talked a lot about since I started doing this, dropped to its lowest yet since recording this back in August at 97%. So sale price to list price ratio this past week dropped to 97%. You can see here, we started back, back in July, last week of July, first week of August. You can see this highlighted column here. This is sale price to list price ratio all the way back then. We were over 100 for the most part for the first 9 weeks and kind of stayed that way. And then once we got into the cold months in the fall, we saw it dip under 100 and pretty much stay there. And as we get here into February, we see 97 for the first time. So prices aren't just stagnating. Maybe they're starting to correct a little bit. I think we've seen about a 1% to 2% correction in the county over the last 2.5 to 3 months. Is this a trend? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Last week, the average days on market for the units sold were 47 days. And this morning, we jumped back up to a 6.97% interest rate on a 30-year conventional note. I want to bring this up again. This is for home sellers, home buyers, whomever. You know, if you went for a 30-year note for FHA, the prevailing rate right now is 6.23%. That's nearly 3/4 of a point less for going with an FHA loan. Sorry about that. I forgot to put my do not disturb on, and I got a little call there, and it kind of screwed everything up, but we're good to go now. So for you home buyers, you know, even if you can go conventional, you might want to consider FHA. And for you home sellers, you know, don't be afraid of seeing FHA, especially if your house is buttoned up. You're not going to have a problem with the dreaded FHA appraisal. These home buyers might be coming FHA just to save 74 basis points on their loan. That is a significant difference in their monthly payment. All right, moving on. The high priced sale of the week last week was $975,000. Want to take you to that listing so you can get a look at this beautiful home in Avon Lake. This was in the new the Southport development there in Avon Lake. And let's go to it. There we go. This big, beautiful colonial. Well, this was almost 3,700 square foot above ground with a finished basement, 5 beds, 4 baths on 0.37 acres. The original list price was $1.195 million. They were trying to fetch that million, didn't quite get there. They eventually had to lower to $995 and sold at $975. But take a look at some of these beautiful images here of this house. And there's one thing I really wanted to talk about that makes me ecstatic about a house like this. I always love the mezzanine inside of the home. As expected, big, beautiful open concept, nice chef kitchen. But it's this view right here that makes me happy, right? I think gone are the days of the generic everything is gray in the home. And the utilization of colors and different colors is starting to become prevalent again in new construction and remodels. I mean, you can see how this flows with the browns in the flooring, the table, the coffee colored cabinets, but you've got the black underneath the big island. You've got the black in the coffee station over here, the black up top in the hood above the range. Love the way these different colors combine with one another. You can see this sort of olive or blue-green that they use in the bathroom. Moving into the laundry room, they've got blue cabinets in there. So color's coming back, folks, and that makes me very happy because I like color, right? It's pretty. And just seeing boring gray, I mean, I get it. Gray is a very clean look. It goes with everything. So you could add color to a room to make it pop. But man, was it boring to go in and look at it. Look at this closet. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a California closet. And love this master bathroom here. Love the way they use the cabinetry here in between the two sinks to add some extra storage, but yet provide a nice clean look. And that is a beautiful $975,000 home built in 2022 in Avon Lake. That was the big boy for the week. All right, very good. So moving on to our topic of the day, I want to bring into the studio Miss Rebecca Donatelli. Hi, Rebecca. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So thank you for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. For the folks out there, Rebecca is with Sotheby's International, and I'm excited to have her on because Rebecca is a real estate rock star. She was highlighted with NAR's the prestigious 30 Under 30 group. And well, let's talk about why. She is currently the Ohio Realtors District 3 Vice President. She was past president of the Lake Geauga Association of Realtors, the Realtor Party Director for Ohio. She served on multiple committees. And oh yeah, by the way, let me show you guys this as well. Rebecca is a published author, which is pretty cool, right? Look at that. Think bigger. It's your time. Step into leadership. That is pretty awesome. Found that on Amazon, folks. So go get your copy. But pretty cool. And I got to tell you, Rebecca, you got to be proud of that. Congratulations. That is amazing.
Thank you. Definitely a very proud moment. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into the topics of the day. So, Rebecca, you are very involved with Ohio Realtors, have been for a long time. And you've been licensed for nearly 9 years, and how long have you been working in an advocacy role?
You know, I've been involved. I started on a local level at the end of my first year in the industry, which was 2016 at some point. And then I didn't get involved with the state until probably 2018. But almost the entirety of my career, I've had a hand in advocacy in some level, whether it's local, state, or national. And I love it. I'm grateful that I, found that opportunity early on because it's brought me a lot of joy, and I love to see it actually make things, see things happen. So
now you say you found the opportunity. Did you find it, or did you seek it? Did it find you? How'd that come about?
No, it's a great point. I did not seek it out. I didn't even know this world even existed, really. I was just this newbie. I was 25 at the time, trying to, sell some houses and, kind of get my head on straight. And no, somebody, an agent that I had transacted with tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we have this YPN happy hour that we think you'd be have a good time at. Why don't you come?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know what YPN is, but I know what a happy hour is. So I'll see you at the happy hour." And
Yes.
and that was it. Yeah. And I really didn't know what I was doing there. I was kind of a little confused that I'm, having a drink with who I considered my competitors, and kind of felt like my time was frankly maybe being a little wasted. But by the end of the night, every person that was there was willing to offer me some kind of golden nugget, if you will, that was helpful and impactful for my business. And so it really opened a lot of doors for me, if you will. My eyes were widened, and just kind of dove in from there. I was invited to join the YPN committee, and kind of explored what was happening on a local level. And then I went to Chicago in 2018 as YPN chair for my local board, and participated in the national YPN retreat, and then kind of got involved on a state and national level and haven't looked back. So
Awesome. That's fantastic. I mean, now you're asked to go out of town, out of state, speaking on state and national levels with frequency. Pretty exciting, pretty cool. So that said, a lot of people are aware that there's these current lawsuits going on with NAR and et cetera, regarding buyer agency. So I don't necessarily want to get into that at all. I've done a video on that. There's plenty to read about for folks online, but as someone involved as you are with Ohio Realtors, you have some, communication, right? Some overlap with National Association of Realtors. What is their suggestion to you, to OR, to Ohio agents to do in light of these lawsuits? What are they kind of prodding us to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that we're really doing is trying to stay as optimistic as we can. We are such an amazing force that we have at NAR. Our advocacy efforts on a national level, not including what we do on a state level, are really unmatched. And so, remaining optimistic, knowing that we hold such an incredible value for buyers and sellers, is really where we're starting. And what NAR and Ohio is recommending that we do as realtors, especially on the buy side, is the use of a buyer agency agreement. There are some states that have had this in place as a state mandated form prior to the lawsuits. And then once the verdict hit, there were some states that passed that legislation almost immediately. Ohio has not passed it yet. However, number one, it's very prevalent. In fact, I just got off a legislative steering committee meeting this morning where we were chatting about it. And Ohio has a buyer representation agreement. If you don't have one at your brokerage, that's available on the Ohio Realtors website. That's been written out by our attorneys, our forms committee. So that is a great opportunity to start. And that is really one of the main things that's going to protect us with what's happening within the industry right now. We are so eager when we go to a listing appointment to get a listing agreement signed by a seller. And this is really a pretty identical thing on a buy side. So it's going to show what kind of value we serve as a buyer's agent, what we are going to be doing for the buyers. So that's one of the main things that NAR and Ohio is recommending. And somebody just asked me the other day, if their brokerage hadn't required it, are they still allowed to use it? And the answer is yes. A lot of the brokerages haven't necessarily picked up on that as a requirement, but Ohio has a form that anybody can use with their buyers at this time.
So explain to people out there who might not know what we're talking about. A buyer representation agreement, or what's commonly called a buyer broker agreement, it's not common practice amongst agents in Ohio, certainly not up here in this area, right? It's not common practice. It may become common practice. And as you mentioned earlier, there's an effort to legislate and mandate the use of a buyer broker agreement with buyers. So tell people out there, what exactly is a buyer broker agreement and why it should be used?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what it does is it lays out a number of things. It lays out what responsibilities we have as a buyer's agent. Very comparable to what you see in a listing agreement. If you look at a listing agreement, it has what we're going to do, what the seller is responsible for. On a buy side, it's pretty comparable in that way that it shows really what our responsibilities are and what value you have on both sides, as a buyer using a buyer's agent and as a buyer's agent working for a buyer. What responsibilities and roles you serve. There's confidentiality clause in there. And what that role is going to be for the duration of the time you're working together. It's also going to lay out the commission which is a big piece, obviously, of what's happening with the lawsuits. For antitrust purposes, we can't talk numbers or anything like that here or anywhere, really. But it would essentially lay out whatever commission it is that is agreeable that the buyer's agent would be paid to make sure that they are getting compensated for their efforts. And it also makes sure that the buyer understands what their agent's going to be doing for them. So it really is beneficial on both sides. And you're right. In Ohio, at least, it really isn't very common practice for folks to be using that. And I want to make something clear, because a lot of people hear this and they immediately think exclusivity. The agreement might not necessarily be an exclusive agreement. So, when we sign a listing agreement, I mean, I haven't seen one that hasn't been exclusive, but you could definitely have one. This isn't necessarily something that is exclusive unless a broker decided that they wanted it to be an exclusive agreement. That would have to be a decision that's made between broker, agent, and then the buyer, if they're willing to sign it.
I'm assuming that state form that you recommended, that you talked about earlier, Rebecca, that state form is not an exclusive agreement then, right?
You're correct. It's not. Yeah. So, and I do want to make that clear, because a lot of people ask that question, and it's because we are so used to signing exclusive listing agreements. There is a difference, and that would be determined, I think, by the broker if they wanted that to be exclusive or not. But it would essentially serve in those types of purposes. And right now in the state of Ohio, we have to have a consumer guide to agency signed by both buyer and seller at the first time of meeting. That's not an exclusive agreement. It doesn't hold anyone to working with anybody, but it has to be signed. And so, I think right now they're kind of determining would the buyer agency agreement be signed at the same time? Would it be signed later on? That's a topic that's happening essentially. Right now it's a really great way to try to protect ourselves with what's happening within the industry.
So I think this is a very important topic to discuss, and it's very important for the folks who are watching. If you or anyone you know are considering getting into the market as a buyer, you need to understand that what Rebecca and I are discussing right here, the buyer broker agreement, is likely to become common practice, whereas right now it is not. But it is likely to become common practice whether or not it is legislated. And of course, if it's legislated, it's going to be mandatory. So you're going to see these things. And I think this segues into sort of our next topic. And that is, a lot of buyers at first are probably going to be wary when the agent puts down this document saying, sign this, if you want me to represent you. And so they might be wary about signing something, especially if they've just met this buyer. So that's why I think buyer consultation is really important for both buyer and agent to sit down, especially in light of the upcoming common use of a buyer broker agreement. Could you expound on that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So yes, this is really the other component that I think has to be a non-negotiable. And right now, if you're someone who's watching this as a realtor, and you decide you don't want to use this buyer agency agreement, which technically you don't have to, it's not mandated, you should still be having a buyer consultation with every single buyer client. We right now more than ever need to show what our value is as realtors, and part of that is letting a buyer know, what are we going to be doing for you? We're not, the first impression that I think a lot of folks are giving when they're meeting buyers is opening a door. That's the first impression that a lot of buyers agents give to a buyer, because that's their first point of contact. That's their first meeting. But I think you need to really sit down and say, okay, this is the value of using a realtor. Just on its own, without doing it by yourself. And this is what I'm going to be doing for you. And this is why it's beneficial for you as a buyer to work with a buyer's agent. And going over in that, every buyer consult will look different. You could have a presentation. You could go over what a transaction is going to look like, what the timeline is going to look like. And it also includes a safety component. With that, meeting your client first. I just saw a video on, I think it might have been Instagram. I was scrolling and some realtor that I don't follow, I don't know her, it just came up, put out this video about how she talked to a buyer on the phone. He explained who he was. He was buying with his family. They go to this house. She pulls up and someone pulls up right behind her. The guy gets out and she says, "So are you, Billy," or whatever his name is. And she opens the door and starts showing Billy the house. And 20 minutes later, she's in this vacant home by herself with someone she thinks is Billy. 20 minutes later, a family comes knocking on the door and it's the actual Billy and his whole family. And she'd been showing a complete stranger who she didn't know this property. It is. And that is unfortunately what is happening. And my first thought was, she's sharing this video for a safety component, which of course is a huge, huge no-no, but on top of that, you can have an opportunity to sit down and know your client, get to know them, put a face to the name, do the due diligence that you need to do as a realtor to get to know them, and them do their due diligence to getting to know you and why they want to work with you. So there's so many different components of doing a buyer consult. There are some really great resources on NAR's website as well as Ohio's website. If anyone were curious on how they can sit down and really share that value. But the buyer consult, in my opinion, go to your office, go to a coffee shop, sit down for 20 minutes. You can get them set up in the MLS or do what you need to do in your systems, but have that face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for the agent, this is the best way to qualify a buyer. If they're not willing to show up to a buyer consultation, they're probably not a real buyer. The safety component that you mentioned, Rebecca, is absolutely huge. I can't stress that enough. And then for the buyer, of course, you want the opportunity to interview this person who is supposed to be representing you on what's likely to be the biggest and most impactful purchase of your entire lifetime, right? So it's the buyer consultation. That is something at our brokerage and on our team that we definitely encourage, and it's not like it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where you get a new buyer on the phone and they got to go see the house right now. Otherwise it might be sold this evening. Houses are still going somewhat quickly, but you got more time. You have enough time to sit down in front of somebody and have this conversation. It's incredible. So, coming out of that, I wanted to talk about some of the, a lot of people don't understand the nature of what NAR really does, what Ohio Realtors really do. And, the biggest impact that you guys have and have had in recent times is about advocacy. So I just wanted you to touch on some of the advocacy efforts that you've been involved with that happened recently and maybe that are happening right now. Tell us about Ohio Realtors advocacy within the state.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where my heart really belongs, is advocacy, RPAC stuff. This was unintentional, by the way, wearing this RPAC.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
I just threw it on. In fact, I have an Ohio Realtors quarter zip underneath, which was also unintentional. But
so real quick, for those out there, RPAC stands for Realtor Political Action Committee. Mm-hmm. All right, go for it. Thank you.
I won't go into that because I could talk for days about RPAC. So, but advocacy, that is one of our main strong suits on NAR and Ohio's levels, is our advocacy efforts. That, what we do on a state and national level and the local levels. When I was president of my local association 2 years ago, we were able to get rid of a 20-year Geauga County point of sale septic inspection that was doing more harm than good. And that was a major effort that realtors have been fighting for years. So there's so much power in having a seat at the table and having some sort of voice within the industry, which is probably, out of any of the things that I've kind of tried doing or been a part of or anything, is my favorite. So one of our biggest efforts, during the years of, well, now it's 2024, which is kind of crazy. But, when COVID hit, just now 2020, we were deemed essential from day one, which for us in the real estate industry in Ohio was huge. And I had friends in other states calling me going, what are you guys doing in Ohio? Because I'm over here in, whatever state, and I literally cannot go show a house or I could lose my license. And, we having relationships with our legislators, with our governor, having a seat at the table is hugely impactful. I mean, if you were a realtor in 2020 and you were licensed, you were able to work because of those advocacy efforts that we made on a state level. And if you were, yeah, no, and it really, it's everybody. It's our staff. I mean, we have an incredible staff, an incredible leadership team, at really just working diligently, going to the state house daily, having those conversations, shaking the right hands, making sure that they hear our voices and constantly keeping up with things that are, put on the table, things that are issues here. And if you were a buyer or a seller in 2020, you were able to make some kind of move because of those efforts as well. It's not just for the realtors, it's for our clients. So that's one of them. We also were able to pass legislation in Ohio that home inspectors have to be licensed. Some were grandfathered in if they were working prior to, but that was huge for us because, before that happened, I could have gone in and done a home inspection. And I don't know anything about electrical other than from the 9 years of home inspections that I've attended. So I'm not a qualified person. Uncle Billy, is not a qualified person to come in and do a home inspection. And this one spoke to me pretty loudly because my first year in the business, I had a nightmare of a home inspection where an intoxicated inspector showed up at my inspection. Oh yeah, it was horrible. And he's writing down, everything now is electronic. You have a 90-page electronic report with photos. He's like writing things down. This great house that had been completely renovated. There wasn't a single thing wrong with it. And my buyers were so spooked. They walked from the transaction while we were still in the house. And I was like, there's no way this guy honestly should be allowed to do this. And so when I found out that this was happening, I was like, sign me up. What do I have to do?
And without licensing, right? Without licensing, there's no board to report them to, right? There's no regulating body to say, hey, Uncle Billy showed up drunk and all this happened.
Correct. It really made such a big impact on our business and for clients. It's protecting on both sides, the buyer and the seller. So it's things like that really make a big impact. And one of the cool things about it on an advocacy side, on a leadership side, is that you literally have a hand in making these things happen, or on the flip side, preventing things from happening that we don't want to happen within the industry, that could result in things, not protecting our clients and realtor members. So it's really fascinating to be a part of it. You have phone call conversations with legislators. You become a part of this world where we're literally working to protect it. And that's one of the great things about our advocacy teams on a local, state, and national level, is that we have that opportunity to have that voice.
Yeah, and you and your peers at OR advocated heavily for licensing for inspectors because you wanted to create a bar, right? A standard for inspectors in the state of Ohio. And talk to us about a recent second look at real estate agent licensing and broker licensing, where they were considering reducing that standard for new agents.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's every 6 years, the legislators essentially revisit licensing requirements. And this was our time in real estate for them to be revisiting what our licensing requirements look like. The licensing requirement to become a salesperson, not a broker, but a salesperson in Ohio is 120 hours. And some of our surrounding states all had lower hour requirements. So essentially these legislators were saying, well, why is it harder to get a real estate license in Ohio? But from an advocacy standpoint, our association, we did not want to lower the standard of becoming a realtor, a salesperson. So we fought very hard, our advocacy team on a state level, as well as realtor members. We have a great program. It's called State Political Coordinator Program in Ohio. I've been in SBC for the past like 5 years, where we're essentially linked up with the legislator, where we can have one-on-one conversations with them. There's also an FPC program on a federal level, but we made sure to let them know we're not in favor of lowering the standard in Ohio. And luckily, our legislative efforts were a success as of this week. And so there's constant things that are changing, that are happening. So that's really exciting for us. And had it not been for our association to speak up and say, hey, we don't want to lower the standard, that could have changed within the industry. So that is very recent. And then the broker requirements are also, I have to check a current update as of right this moment. It changes literally every day, but they were also looking to change some of their requirements, because it used to be that you had to have, I think, a bachelor's degree to become a broker. And then they changed it to just an associate's degree. And now that requirement is being looked at. I don't think as of today, anything has passed or not. But on the salesperson side, the 120 hours stands. So that's fantastic.
Okay. So what I heard in all that is that real estate agents in Ohio are better than real estate agents in Michigan.
Well, don't get me started on Michigan. We'll leave that for another day.
Right. Awesome. So Rebecca, that kind of wraps us for today. Listen, I really, really appreciate you coming on and giving me your time. You're super busy. You're out there killing it all the time, every day. And I really appreciate you giving me this time today to come on the show and educate us. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Very cool. Hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future. Yes, definitely would love to. All right. You have a great one. Thanks again. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, my friends. Until next week, take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. I love you, people.